All right, we're on. Well, hey, welcome to Raise the Bar, the Sky High and Fly Jump Camps podcast. I'm your host, Troy Haynes, and I'm excited to welcome today Jonathan Broom-Edwards. How you doing, Jonathan?
Troy, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm all right, mate. Yeah, I'm doing all right. Busy time, but I'm enjoying what I'm doing at the moment.
Awesome. Well, what are you up to? Is this training or work related, or what's going on?
Training's yeah, it's ramped up. It's I'm in winter training at the moment, so lots of volume, lots of grunt work, as we'd call it.
Uh-huh.
And alongside that, I've started an osteopathy degree, so I'm doing that part time.
Wow.
As well as seeing clients I'm a therapist as well. So I work alongside my athletics career to keep my mind active. Um, and other than that, I've moved into a new house, so I'm doing some DIY. So
Right. Okay.
busy time.
Yeah, yeah. Sounds like you got a lot of things going on. Lots of irons in the fire, as it were. Why don't you give us a little bit of background, Jonathan? I'm just going to tell everybody straight up that I came across Jonathan's stuff on your stuff on Instagram, and where it seems like I get all my information, and I'm looking through there, and oh yeah, and I remember you and I may have just commented on something I don't even remember, and you were gracious in replying, even because some people don't. They're either too busy or you don't have enough likes for them, or whatever it is that happens, and you graciously responded. Then we kind of got into going back and forth about maybe doing a podcast. And, I didn't really do any homework on you. I just watched your jumps, and jumping was impressive. And, the heights that I was looking at were, impressive heights. These weren't, the kind of high school kids that I'm working with, or, even small college. So I had no idea that you were a Paralympian. So, that's pretty amazing when you think about it. So why don't you tell us about how that all started? I was reading your Wikipedia, but I'm sure you could tell it better than I can.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. Right. So yeah, I'm a Paralympian, but for a lot of my life, I didn't kind of know that my impairment could classify me for Paralympic sport. I was born with what's called talipes equinovarus, otherwise known as clubbed foot, which predominantly affects my left foot. I had a few things going on with my right foot as well. This was all from birth. So I was born with deformed feet, had to go through multiple procedures, surgery, kind of bracing, different shoes as I was growing up, orthotics for a big part of my life. But I thank my mum. She always pushed me to just try everything, try all different sports, and join in and do as much as I could with what I had, the cards that I was dealt.
Right.
Um, Basketball was my love when I was younger. So to be able to, I always wanted to train to be able to dunk the ball, to be able to have hang time. I enjoyed being up, going up for a jump shot, going up. The other people would jump up, and then they'd go down, and then I'd put the shot away. So it was something I was really passionate about, and I just couldn't train my left side. I couldn't train it to match my right side. I've got a really strong right calf, right leg, but my left leg has atrophy in the muscles. It has wastage or dystrophy rather. So
Right.
it doesn't function like my right foot. I'm not able to plantarflex my foot. I can dorsiflex it, which is lifting it up. I can just about move it in and out, but not that much. But for me, I have to work extremely hard on my technical model, on my curve running in terms of high
Right.
jump, in order to maximize what I can get off my left side. And it's been a journey, yeah, like coming into Paralympic sport when I was 24.
Wow. So you said you found out about that late, the fact that it qualified. So you had already been competing, just the way you were against everybody else, right? And
Yeah, just by chance, I tried out high jump 1 year at university. In between years, a lot of my basketball squad had gone off on placement years, and I hadn't. So going into the next year, I didn't have my team.
right.
So that year, I just decided to try something different. I tried high jump out, found I was pretty good at it, and I was spotted by a sports massage therapist whose dad was a coach in Paralympic sport. And that was the kind of thing that got the ball rolling, got me
Okay.
introduced to the coaches, and started off the whole the whole process of classification. So it was literally a sink or swim moment. I was chucked right into the deep end. Won silver at my first international in Lyon 2013, which is in France. And since then been having the battles for progressing up to the gold medal, which I did in 2019 and then 2021.
Saw that. I actually have a clip of you that I was ready to share. Let's take a look at that really quick. I've got Jonathan here in action. We're going to share. Took this right off of YouTube with a screen recording. It's one of the great experiences of my life, just recently discovering these. And here you are.
Oh, this is at 2:10. Now he cleared that. You can see how highly delighted he was. This has been a right old tussle between three athletes, this final. Lepiato from Poland, who was the defending champion, was involved in this as well, but the best he could.
All right, so I'm going to turn down the sound on that just for a second and back it up. This is some of my favorite stuff, is watching video. So like I said, those of you that out there, if you're listening to the podcast, obviously you can't see this, but we are going to post this on YouTube as well. So there will be some that can see it. And I'm noticing a very good high cycling running technique, which I'm always trying to train my athletes to get. I see what I would call a very good slide step, the last step here, where that cycling kind of stops and you get that foot down on the ground quickly, right? And then we've got a good heel toe setup, body lean back to match the leg, a really good technique. I see a high knee drive and ride, and one of those unique leg kick out moves. I've jumped against guys like that and coached against guys like that. I've never actually had anybody do that, but it's not an uncommon move. And I'm wondering if that was something that you picked up or just did inherently from when you started jumping.
The hitch out of the leg is actually what I found as I've worked on my technical, and actually more recently is it's about like helping me get the positioning over the bar.
Right.
And it's actually one of my least efficient parts of my jump. It's something I've been working quite hard to help rectify. But what you'll notice with my left foot is that I'm unable to get the heel to bump, to bring the heel through quicker, because it's a lot thinner, it's a lot weaker. It doesn't have, it's almost like a drag.
Yeah, I can see it right there. We're looking at it right there. So yeah, you can't quite get it, that high cycle finish right into the knee drive. Okay.
And if I were to pick apart my own technical there, I'm almost leaning a little bit into the bar. Now, just to give a bit of context to this, because this is a 2 meter 10 bar, but for the conditions, that was probably one of my best jumps I've ever pulled out. Because as we turned up to the competition, it was biblical torrential rain. Like I'm talking biblical. After I was in Tokyo for 3 weeks, and it was beautiful sunshine, 40-degree heat, and on that day it was freezing cold. So it was such a change. So this is where the mindset of like what I did in terms of my mindset building up to this and during the competition, that's something I will always be proud of, because I was able to keep my cool even when like the conditions were torrential, dreadful.
Right.
And the chips were down at some parts of that competition. But for me, like I'm working to get stronger on my left side to almost allow myself to go up a little bit more before I'm reaching for the bar. So that's me picking apart my own technical. But for when it comes to a major championships like this, you're just praying for what sticks from your training.
Absolutely.
It's about competing, and I competed well in that one.
Well, so what? Nobody likes rain when it comes to being a high jumper. I've had Doug Nordquist on this show before. Doug told me about, one time when because he ran a really fast curve and leaned, I swear, almost about 45 degrees to the left, and it was slick. And he just said he just went, out to the side and was like, he described it as nipples deep under the pit, like all the way under, and it's terrifying the first time that happens to you. And then of course, after that, there's no way you're going to run as fast, lean as much, or try to get away with as much, because once you slip on any given day, I know from that personal experience, you're just super hesitant about, really trusting it to hold up, like you said, under pressure. So a 210 jump in the rain is impressive, especially with, like you said, the chips were down. So
yeah, they really were. I think I was on a third attempt at the 207 bar beforehand. And that was probably my best jump of the competition. So to pull that out when it mattered, that I thank my stars for that, to pull it out at that point. But you can never fully prepare for what the rain does for you, but you can always visualize what you need to do around setting yourself up right, and you are going to be a bit slower. You are going to have to work really, really hard on your technical in order to still make it happen. And for a lot of the other competitors in that competition, they started probably 10 centimeters lower than what they normally would. You could see it in their body language, see it in their faces. They were really like stressing out.
Right.
And because I'm from Britain, I'm used to a little bit of rain. But also I'd visualize the what ifs leading up to this competition, and what would I need to do if it rained. And I stapled down my run up mark. I'd brought a poncho, I brought a towel, I brought an umbrella. I'd got everything just in case it rained, even though the 3 weeks build up was beautiful sunshine.
Yeah.
So because of that, I started the competition 10 centimeters higher than everyone else, and that led to my victory, I suppose. Then
that is, you would be what we call a good Boy Scout, and over here, the Boy Scouts, the motto is be prepared, right? So sounds like you were prepared for every contingency and had already wrapped your brain around, like you said, having a plan, what you would do if, and everybody else sounds like they were just blindsided, like sunny the day before, and all of a sudden, here you go, Noah's flood. What are you going to do? So that's impressive. I'm so fascinated by this world, and I'm a little bit upset sometimes at the way that you guys get treated. And when I say you guys, I'm going to say Paralympians in general, because I watched. I've been an Olympics junkie since I was 8 years old. My mom showed me my first Olympic games. I was 1972. I'm watching the games in Munich, Germany, and I'm on TV like this at 8 years old, going, "Wow." I'm seeing gymnastics and basketball and boxing and all these sports, and I'm like, what is this? What is this, Mom? She's like, these guys are competing in the Olympics. And I go, what do they do? And then I saw my first medal ceremony, and they're stepping up on the box and put the medals around them. I'm like, oh my God, that's the greatest thing ever. So, every time I'd be watching that, in 76, at 12 years old, I got to watch, great American boxing teams and on and on. So, I'm in love with it. I love watching it. And I watched it in 2021, like everybody else, waiting the extra year. And then you guys get to go like a week or so later, a couple weeks later. I forget how it was. And I remember thinking, wait a minute, why are we pushing them aside and making them wait? I'm like, this is the big spectacle, right? Let's do it all together, and I've heard I understand that there are many classifications, like you mentioned. Just there's a couple, I know, and I think you can qualify for more than one sometimes, or how does that all go? It's a world that I really don't know much about.
There is a difficulty, I think, with like joining it up. There's certain competitions they're starting to bring it more into a merged or combined event. I think, like I've spoken to many people about the logistics of having a fully combined Olympics, Paralympics, merged competition. It would probably actually be too much logistically to have us all in like a Paralympic, an Olympic village, have us all kind of competing in together. It would also go on for a lot longer.
Right.
So actually to have it separate, as two separate entities, almost does give us as Paralympians the kind of time under the spotlight. Although there are many events like the Diamond Leagues which could easily be like integrated, you know, and probably should be. There's no reason why, you know, we shouldn't be achieving the same kind of prize money, you know, as the able-bodied. Like, I mean, I think the most prize money I've ever got in my whole career is about 200 euros. You know, I've not been to a Diamond League where I can actually compete against similar competitors and earn 10 grand or whatever it is. You know, it's just not, it's not quite there. The movement is getting better, but like you say, there's a lot of complexity to Paralympic sport. There's a lot of different classifications. You could be in 2 different classifications. Say you had a neurological disorder like cerebral palsy, but you're also a visually impaired athlete. You could potentially go under 2. It's just a case that, you know, for actual selection for the Paralympics, you kind of want to go with what one have I got more chance to actually medal. You know, there's been separations of classes. Like my class used to be combined with the below the knee amputees. Now, so I'm a T44. They are now a T64. It's just it almost becomes quite difficult for your general public to observe and understand all the different intricacies. But that's not to say that it shouldn't be publicized more, because people still want to watch it. You know, there is. I mean, if you've seen, my roommate in Tokyo is a visually impaired javelin thrower. Can you believe? You know, there's people with one leg jumping, like high jumping. You know, there's people without an arm doing certain events. Like some of the things that these athletes do is quite incredible. So it's just allowing the public to actually see it, which is what needs to happen.
Well, for instance, I have in my, you know, my Instagram saved files, which basically I'm a junkie again there. I'm usually have on my feed athletes like yourselves, coaches, trainers, you know, fan sites for certain jumpers. And sometimes I'll see something and somebody's, you know, doing squats or step ups or lunges. And then I see plyometrics going on, or I see a competition jump of some kind. And sometimes I'm like, oh, wow, that's really good. And I stick it in a folder, you know, immediately. And then I remember seeing what you're talking about. I saw a kid who's, you know, standing there with crutches, throws the crutches down and is hopping on one leg, right? And goes up and you're watching just going, wow, just the fact that he's going towards the bar is amazing enough, because he's literally running on one leg. Like, I follow Lucas, you know, I think it's right? I mean, he's awesome. I watch his training all the time. I'm like, this guy works harder than most jumpers I know. So I'm, you know, just, it's inspiring to me. You know, ever since I was a kid, there was a commercial here in the States that I saw when I was about 7 or 8 years old. I can't remember, but it showed a young boy waking up in the morning, and you see him start to roll up out of bed, and he doesn't have either arm. He's, you know, I don't know if it was congenital or, you know, I'm pretty sure, but you know, he reaches over with his feet into his bedside drawer and starts pulling out his socks and putting on his socks with his feet, right, to get up and go about his day. And I remember watching that going, man, I have got no excuses for anything the rest of my life. You know what I mean? Like, get up off your butt and go do something, you know, like you're saying. I love the fact you said your mom was, you know, hey, just go out there and do the best you can, you know, instead of like, you know, it's awesome. I'm a big fan.
I've had the privilege of seeing so many incredible things with certain Paralympians. I've seen, there's a good friend of mine, like, wheel towards some steps, like he has no legs. He's got off of the wheelchair. He's then dragged his wheelchair up the steps with his arms. You know, like, fair play. Going back to Lucas as well. Lucas is almost like he's evolving with his high jump, because he's always historically gone over, you know, front first. Right. But he's now almost trying to train himself with the one leg to get the same kind of like lean back position and go over the bar backwards to to raise his hips over the bar. I mean, I can't even comprehend how you do that.
Right.
Yeah. He's doing that, and it's like, you know, I love to see amazing things from that. I've competed against Lucas before, believe it or not, when we've had Rasa point scheme. So based on the world record two classes which are very different. You know, for one of the competitions, he jumped 1 meter 78, and to beat him, I needed to jump at least 2 meters 10 based on the Rasa point system.
Right.
With another competition, because our world record had progressed, and theirs hadn't, I then had to jump 2 meters 14 to beat him, and I didn't that year, so I got a bronze to him. So it's like, you know, there is ways to merge it, but again, I think it's a case of making it a little bit simpler and having something there to explain to people who are watching, what's going on with everybody, you know, because there's a lot to, you know, uncover with this.
Well, like you said, I mean, just watching alone, I've been able to pick up, okay, you know, you've got an amputee or maybe someone who's born congenitally without a certain part hopping on one leg. And then you've got somebody else that has the prosthetic, right? And they run up and jump. You know, I've seen long and triple jump, you know, do that. Like you're saying, the visually impaired, I've seen the one where there's somebody clapping right down the runway so that they can hear and run down and go forward into the sand.
Have you seen the guy that misses the pit and lands on his coccyx?
Yeah. Oh,
like,
ouch. Yeah. So, but you know, like I said, all of that is awe inspiring, like you said, and just the attitude inherent in that, like you said, your buddy going up to the stairs and then hopping off the wheelchair and dragging up with one arm. It's not like, you know, sitting around and going, hey, could you come carry this up the stairs for me? You know, it's just like, I don't have that time. I don't have time for that. I'm just going to do this myself, you know, and that's just, it's mind blowing to me. And I have a literal folder of inspiration, you know, if I'm waiting, if there's ever anybody that needs that kick in the butt to go, hey, I don't want to hear this whining that you're doing. Like, look at this guy, you know, you got more gifts and you're doing less with them, you know, that kind of thing. So what's coming up next? And you said you're in the midst of training and heavy volumes and all that. I'm assuming when you're saying heavy volumes, we're talking about volumes of lifting and plyos, or is this also jumps? What's that entail?
Oh, it's the amount of drills that my coach is getting me to do around a circle. There's volume of that. It's volume of like foot contacts and like feet loading, you know, sand work, Bosu ball work to strengthen my feet. In my gym, yes, there's volume of lifts, plyometrics. It's just like almost continual circuits, and I've got sled runs, I've got other runs. It's just a lot, you know. It's a lot of work just to get me fit as well. Burn off some of the holiday timber, you know, that I do in the off season.
Right.
What's coming next? I mean, the next 2 years are actually really busy. It was even busier. We were actually due to have a Europeans and a World Championships both years,
right?
So 2023 and 2024, as well as the Paralympics in 2024. However, the Europeans have been cancelled. So we've got a World Champs next year, we've got a World Champs the following year, and we've got a Paralympics in that same year. Wow. Just because a lot of our major championships were moved because of COVID. So, you know, we had a down year last year, and then this coming year is going to be a World Champs in Paris.
So yeah, that's oh man, going to Paris for the Olympics, how cool would that be? That's the other thing to me about the Olympics that's so awesome is the bouncing around the globe, you know, like getting to see the venues. And you know, I was, you know, fortunate enough to be here in college at UCLA when the Olympics were here in '84. So, you know, the Olympic Village was really close by in LA, and, you know, UCLA was one of the training facilities for a lot of the athletes. You know, they would come by and use the track. And that was really cool. It wasn't as many as I would have thought, actually. I'm not really sure where everybody did the bulk of their training, but there were some. And, you know, now we're coming up on 2028 coming back here to LA. So it'll be since '84, that's 16, like 44 years, I guess. So a long skip in between Los Angeles and the US, but it's, you know, if they end up doing anything at the Coliseum, that'll be amazing, because that's just such a, you know, an old venue with lots of history in it. And so how old are you now, Jonathan?
I'm getting on, mate. I'm 34 now. So I'll be
34.
36 in Paris.
And your personal best, is it 2:15, or have you gone higher than 2:15 now?
I've gone higher, but not officially. I actually in some of my training jumps in Tokyo in the beautiful sunshine, I did clear a 2 meter 16 bar, and that was in training. You know,
Right.
so I was feeling really optimistic for the competition. I felt in a really good place, and then it tipped it down. But I did what I needed to do.
Right. So 2:15 is 7.5 feet. So 2:16, I'm gonna guess, is what, like 7 feet 1 or seven. I don't know what they're I know it doesn't always measure out exactly. The metric world is still a mystery to me. If any of you are listening to the podcast in the past and comparing them to now, I'm always just like, when we grew up, it was always just feet and inches. They didn't bother to measure the metric, so it was just 6'4", 6'6", 6'8". And then when I got into college, it was kind of all about the metrics, but it was almost like they didn't trust us, that the fact that we were students in college and obviously had a little bit of intelligence, that the guys would never tell us. They would just say, oh, we're putting the bar to 6'10", and it would be 210, which is 6'10 3/4, but they wouldn't tell you that. And then one of the famous ones I was at, they actually went from 210 and they managed to skip 2:15 and went to 2:20. So there was like, we went from 6'10 to 2:20 and only one guy made it and everybody else missed. And then we're waiting for him to come back and say, okay, we're gonna put the bar at 7.2. And the guy comes back and goes, we already had the bar at 7.2, so we're gonna go to 4.25. And we're all like, what? You skipped a height? And it's like, oh, the bar's already gone up, you can't put it back down. Like, oh, okay, great, thanks, you guys did a great job.
That is that's the aim for me, actually, is the 2 meter 20 bar. So what, 7'4" is that, or
220 is 7.2.5?
7'2.5".
7.2.5.
Because that would be, for my category, a new world record. So that's the goal for the next year.
Awesome. So the first thing that occurred to me is, as we were talking about your volume of training, and you had mentioned that your left leg, having some atrophy or just, did you say atrophy or dystrophy, or?
Well, it's got both. Dystrophy is muscle wastage, and I have muscle wastage in my soleus muscles, but I have muscular atrophy through my gastroc muscles of the calf. Okay. I just can't, and they don't strengthen up that much.
Right. Well, the thing that occurred to me was, I just had a podcast yesterday morning with a guy named Dario Saisan. He does Saisan training. I don't know if you've seen him on Instagram now, but relatively new in the last few months. I've been noticing his stuff, and it's a little bit different, a little bit more cutting edge. I really like him. And we were talking about 2-leg versus 1-legged training. And I was just thinking, I go, wow, Jonathan sounds like, my first thought was, do you do, traditional front and back squats with 2 legs? You do deadlifts with 2 legs? I go, maybe that would be, in your training, maybe it would be more beneficial. He was talking about like a 70-30 split between 2-legged lifts and 1-legged lifts. And he was saying he's leaning towards the one. And I agreed with him. I go, well, you can't think of a spot in our sport or even in our event where you're pushing with both legs at the same time, right? So your takeoff's a single leg. So why wouldn't you train it that way, right? So, but I was just curious. The first thing that popped in my head when you're talking about one side being maybe a little bit weaker is, does that affect how you lift and what kinds of lifts and whatnot?
Yeah. So I kind of follow that kind of 70-30, like you just said, but I will still do back squats with 2 legs. I will do hang clean and hang snatch with my 2 legs, but I will then do single leg step ups with a bar on my back. I will do lunge, split lunge sort of thing with my back. I'll do single leg press, and then it's single leg RDLs and like that sort of
right.
load as well. And then when it comes to like any sandpit work, I'm doing single leg hops. With plyometrics, I'm doing single leg bounds as well as skips, and I do still have some like double leg bunnies and for height as well as distance. Like all of these things are, I'm conditioning. I'm generally conditioning, but I'm also trying to isolate the weakness, because actually my step up is actually weaker because of the complexities of my leg and my hip. my step up is weaker with my right foot going down.
Yeah.
So it's like in that kind of isolated movement, that's where I've got a weakness that I'm really trying to push on at the moment. So it's always good to kind of do the individual work as well.
Right. It's an area, things have changed. Like I said, when I was jumping in college, my last year in college was 86. My last year in competition was 92. I took a last shot at trying to get to the US trials, in the high jump in 92. And by then I was 28 and I thought I was washed up. I haven't made anything happen. I hadn't PR'd since 86, so 6 years later, I'm still struggling along, and I hung them up. So when I asked you how old you were and you said you're 34, I'm like, wow, 34, that's hanging in there. But so many things have happened. I know you got a later start than some. And
yeah, I didn't come up the grassroots. I had conditioning in basketball, and yes, I had some loading with the jumps I was doing then, but it wasn't the specific kind of pounding that you'll have with high jump throughout your
right.
the grassroots career. So my training age is probably a lot lower. I may well be in my 28 28th year in terms of training age. But I'm still getting better. I'm still getting better and PRing in my strength. I was very unfortunate last year, the year before, to like not get my 2m16 officially. I just wobbled the bar and I knocked it off. So, and to do that in Tokyo as well and actually clear the bar, even though it wasn't official,
right.
I'm still progressing, and because all the work I'm doing now is those 1%er improvements. It's the amount of drills that I'm doing now is to improve my movement around the curve and get me as strong as possible against the force of the curve.
Right.
So I'm hopeful. I've got 2 more years to give it a proper bash. I've always got that medal now, but for me, I want to come out with one more PR because I felt in shape to do it for a few years now.
Right. Yeah, it's awesome. Another technical question just popped in my head. You're saying, you're leaning into the curve and, the force of the curve. I've just in the last few years become, I'm not want to say fascinated or driven by, but curious about. I've talked with so many of my jumpers over the years, and I'm always really concerned with what the drive knee is doing, coming up and across. For a lot of jumpers, you'll see that high up and across the Stephen Holm, way up and over. It helps you stop that swing up, and I like to leave it up and ride it up and do other stuff from there. The arms, there's so much going on with the arms, like how they're driven up. What do you do with them once you're off the ground? Do you drop them to your hips? Do you reach for your heel? So there's 3 limbs that are kind of all over the place, right? And then I'm like, well, the jump leg just jumps. You hit and you extend up. And when you watch it on film, almost everybody, even a novice jumper that's converting way over towards the pit, when you draw a line from their toe or their heel and then to toe off, that straight line will pretty much go right through the leg. That leg goes straight. Now they might be, going in instead of up, but eventually, it's a straight leg. It's getting higher and higher, more vertical. Great. But I'm looking at it going functionally, what do you do with that leg? From heel toe, you roll up onto your toe and then you extend with a lot of power, and there you go. And it never occurred to me, and I've been coaching since 1988, that you could train that leg more specifically and more for its job. And my thought of the job is to counteract all the forces that are going towards the bar, because as we're running towards the bar, I'm both my best friend and my own worst enemy, because as I'm running towards that bar, the energy is going the wrong direction in some ways. Like I tell my kids, I go, there's a big black hole in the middle of that pit. And when you're running at it, the black hole's going, yes, come here, more gravitational pull, pulling you across. And you have to, it's almost like a science fiction movie where you get there, you go, oh my God, we're flying into the sun, like hang a left and hit the gas, and like, what is redirecting? The knee drive, the arm drive, and I was talking about the other three limbs all the time. I'm like looking at them, segment analysis, comparative joint analysis, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, wait a minute now, that left leg is on the ground. It has an opportunity to push against that curve, just like everything else. Right. So why do we lean back so much and get that heel toe? Because we don't want to come right over that foot. And also, why do I lean so much for me to my left and for you to your right? Because I don't want to come right through there really quick and go towards the bar. I want to slow that down and try to go up more. So I started, looking at plyometrics that go laterally, more and more lateral. And also, first time I saw someone drop down off of a box and jump backward up onto the box, that caught my eye, because I remember thinking, now you're not going to jump backwards. That's impossible, right? We're moving too fast. But I'm just thinking, as I roll through and I have, even if there's a little bit of ability to push both back and away with that leg, because I'd never thought of it before, you know what I mean? So it's like, and I started seeing all this the single leg plyometric stuff coming out. And usually when I see that, it's the outside leg pushing back, right, this way. And I said, hey, what if you take the inside leg over and start really leaning and pushing, against your own body weight?
Well, I'm thankful for my coach, who sadly retired this year. He's now mentoring my current coach. So his name's Graham Ravenscroft. But he was a fan of basketball as well. Mm-hmm. And that part of my training, a big part of my training, was agility work. And it was, it was taking things from like, the basketball suicide, for example, where you run into the line, you're then trying to change direction and go the other way.
Yes.
So a lot of my circuits would be, if I've got a bunch of cones, I'm going from left to right and I'm sidestepping. So I sidestep, change direction, sidestep, change direction, then go a bit again, change direction. And that kind of movement was the thing which was helping me strengthen my ability to withstand the curve. On a box, going from left over, right over, left over, right over, and you're doing just that activation in that directional plane,
right,
and the diagonal plane rather. And that for me has been a huge improvement on my left foot's ability to deal with the force.
Right.
Because what we've got to remember is when we're running a curve, we stay on the curve right until the moment we then go into takeoff position.
Yeah.
The takeoff position actually comes slightly off curve to change that horizontal force into vertical force. And the curve itself, this is where, do we need to actually focus on the other three limbs, as you said, or will the curve create that movement that allows us to then get our hips in the air?
Right.
There is some hip thrust that can be done once you've taken off, but I actually believe that if you can run the curve well enough, you're almost getting your body position right for takeoff, and then in the air it's going to do its thing. It's whether or not it's when we kind of disturb that takeoff position, we lean towards the bar, then all of a sudden we're going in a slightly off direction, we're then having to flail our legs or something to kick and get over in the bar in the right position. So that's what I'm really working on now, is to get that takeoff position absolutely nailed, withstand all the force of the curve, so that once I've taken off and I've gone up, I'm continuing to go up and go into that kind of parabola, that arc.
Right.
And
right.
That will take me to the higher heights. So
you're fighting like all my kids are fighting for is what I call VTOL, is just vertical takeoff and landing, right? Like a jet that, fires its rockets up and then takes off. We're kind of like, we're striving for as pure as you can get there. And I've had a chance to jump against and train with a couple of different jumpers that could do. I could never hit a literal straight up and down vertical. I think, I don't even know what the degrees were, because, back in my dinosaur days, we didn't have any of these videos. I can watch anybody on video now. I shoot it with my camera. It looks perfect. I've got perfect resolution. I can slow it down. I can still see everything. When we were jumping, when I was in college, we had either 8mm film, which was fantastic, but it was expensive, and it was hard to get feedback from it because it took a week to get it back. Or you had videotape, which was immediate, but it was grainy, when you try to slow it down and look at it. So, hitting vertical is a real art form. And again, one of the guys I trained with, Lee Balkin at UCLA, was a 7.3 jumper in high school, jumped 7.4 1/4. And I think by the time he left, he jumped 7.6, and he was like 6'4", maybe 160 pounds, perfect, tall, thin, fast, could run the quarter in like 48, something like that. He's a 400-meter. He's just fast and light and everything. I hated him. He's a great teammate. I'm joking. He was very tough to compete both, with and against. And I think I beat Lee once, and I had to PR twice to do it. And I keep telling everybody all the way through college, every meet that I PR'd in, I go, this is very humbling. Every single time I PR'd in college, I never won the meet, not once. When I jumped 215 for the first time, I came in second, and I think it was to Lee. Then when I jumped 220, 218, I jumped a few weeks after that, which was 272, right? So yeah, I jumped 218, and I think I came in third. And then my senior year, I jumped 7.2 1/4 is, which I think was 219. I think I jumped 219, and I came, and that was the first PR in that meet. And then I jumped 222, and I still came in second to a guy that jumped 220, 225. So I was like, what do I have to do, right? And then when you were competing against Lee, every time we saw film, he was just, his takeoff every time. I don't know, I need to meet his high school coach, because I've heard him talked of with a lot of respect, not just from coaching Lee, but from some others. And whatever he did with him, he always came off the ground straight up and down, and then would, like you're saying, the parabola after that, and he was ungodly flexible on top too. So even if he hadn't done a perfect job in his approach, then he could, what I call, noodle his way over, because he was one of those people that could look like it touches, his back of his head to his heels, so frustrating to jump against, very humbling.
If you've ever watched Marco Fascinotti jump, he was very much like that. That guy could bend in half, I'm sure. When it was always good watching him and training with him.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, it's the thing that's fascinated me, I don't know about you, Jonathan, is, now I've been coaching and, doing this for so many years, is that I'm not what you would call a formula person. Like, I don't sit there and go, okay, look, this is the Haynes system. This is exactly what you're going to do. You're going to run up and you're going to be just like me. When I hit my curve, I went gather and double arm, boom, and that's just the way we do it here. And that's the only way to jump, because I've been around too long. I've watched too much film. The guy who invented the event had a reverse double arm, which nobody does anymore. The Fosbury itself, it's like, I've seen two different people that I've either jumped against or actually trained one who was a girl in high school that did the reverse arm thing. Very, very rare. Then you've got your single armers, you've got your double armers with the gather, you've got some people, what I do, the whip back double arm, and once you start breaking it down, you go, okay, there's a lot of different styles here that work. And then some people drive that knee up and leave it up and just sail over, and they never do a thing with it after that, but they leave it up there. Some people drive it up and immediately throw it back down and pop their hips and do other things. And some people, throw their head straight back. Some people put their chin on their chest. Some people turn their head to the side and throw back this way. Some people reach that arm back, right? So as you go through and you realize there's like a lot of mixing and matching we can do here, because there's not one textbook way, to get this thing done. It's like, how did you get over it? And if it worked for you, because there's body styles, there's fast twitchers, there's, whatever you want to categorize them as. So, when I look at stuff, it becomes, what are their strengths, right? What are their inherent strengths as they're going through? And then what can we, make stronger? What can we fix? Do they need to get some flexibility? Do they need to, like you're saying, work on your drive leg, maybe, for some reason, maybe I'm not be able to driving that knee up the way I could or whatever. So let's do more hip flexor work. And it's just fascinating. And that's why I love the event so much. I go, for me, I'll tell the kids, one of the primary things that drives me nuts is you guys that are too close to the bar. So I'm like, you need to get farther away from the bar. And it happens as you're going up anyway, right? So as we're going up, we need to make sure that we are, far enough away from the bar and even farther, because as the bar goes up, you need more time to hit that peak height. And some people, the more you move them away, the less they can jump. They cannot function. They start diving towards the right or the left or whatever it is. And then when you put them in close, they look all bothered by the bar and everything, but that's how they learn how to function. They drive their knee up and then they start contorting and they manage to get around it sometimes. And you're just like, I don't know how you can do that. So my brain has started thinking maybe the people that I have trouble with their knee drives, maybe I need to crowd them so that they really drive that knee back and across so that they don't hit the bar, which is now right by their ear, because they're right on top of it. Maybe that's a good overcompensation drill. I don't know.
I had to go closer to the bar
Mm-hmm.
to help me, accelerate upwards. Because I was one of those that if I was taking off too far and I was just diving towards the bar.
Right.
So I think it's getting the sweet spot. You ultimately you do have to have the right parabola. We want to kind of go up like that.
Right.
Up and down. The thing is, if we are too far away, sometimes what we can do is we can actually travel along the bar, and it's a longer parabola.
Yes.
So it is getting that sweet spot, and sometimes you do have to move the runner back, but that's not always essential, I don't feel, because we have a limit to how high we can jump, and if you are hitting the sweet spot each time, you will go to your maximum, and actually altering the curve may well prove to be a detriment to your ability.
Right.
So it is obviously it's unique to the individual, isn't it?
Oh, well, that's the great thing too. And, for forever and a day, as I was coming along in both competing and then coaching, you would hear that argument over, oh, that guy's a power jumper and that guy's a speed guy. It's speed versus power. And, I have the blessing of having been a kinesiology major at UCLA, and I've got another degree in exercise science, in kinesiology from Cal State Long Beach. And a lot of biomechanics work, a lot of forces and vectors and angles and all that kind of stuff. And I love that. I find it fascinating. So having that background and hearing about, this speed versus power, you see guys that run slower, and they just gather those arms back and just blam, they take off and they go straight up, and then they tend to stall, and they got to hit a great layout position if they can, and then come down. And then there's other guys that are just, and when they launch, they just sail, and you're like, okay, yeah, there's two different styles. And then, but also when I was talking with someone, I think it was just Dario yesterday, I go, hey, isn't power is force times velocity, right? So inside of the power equation is both ends of the spectrum contained in the same formula. So if you're a power jumper, supposedly power equals force, against the ground times the speed that you're moving. I'm like, that's both things in the equation. I can produce force and I can do it fast or slow, right? So in my mind, I want to increase my power no matter which style I am. And if I can increase both of those, right, both the force produced and the speed at which I'm producing it, then I'm going to be able to do more power, right? And then try to use it, of course, in the right way at the takeoff.
Still trying to figure out what type of jumper I am, but because I'm trying to gain for more speed, but similar to a distance away from the bar, getting the right speed and velocity and power is almost, you've got to get that sweet spot as well.
Yeah, well, it doesn't look like you're ambling up there from what I can see. You've got pretty good attack speed. The power jumpers just really kind of, they've got a nice smooth. I think of Charles Austin that way. From that Olympics. If you watch him, he just looks so strong. And even though I'm not sure how you would categorize Derek Drown, but or I forget how you say his name. I would say Drown. I don't know if it's
Druin. Is it Druin?
Yeah, I know, right? Tomato, right? So, but as I'm watching him in the games in 2016, he's fast, but he also looks so powerful. That approach is just boom, 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 boom. And he's like But when he got going, he looked just like Bondarenko. I mean, they were flying from that side, and hitting, amazing, amazing heights. So it's like, man, and Barshim's no slouch either, for a guy that's in some ways is a classic double arm power guy, but he's moving. It's like he's not trotting up there. So it is fascinating on those ends. Well, let's take a little side route. I wanted to talk to you about what you're doing professionally. You said you're what I read on Wikipedia was you're doing work with gait analysis, and you're also helping people with disabilities. Talk to us about that a little bit.
Yeah. So, well, like I said to you, I think I said just before we went on air, I'm training as an osteopath now. So, I'm doing a part-time degree, but I've been a soft tissue therapist working with osteopathic principles and techniques for best part of 12 years. I've always been fascinated by the body. I've always been fascinated by how to get my own body moving better. So it's like I became a student of my own sport, but also a student of my own body over the years. I also do a lot of charity work with school visits, but that's more to kind of try and inspire children to get more active. But in terms of my clinical work, I mean, I'm in my clinic now. I've got certain certificates,
right?
And I'm currently on my my massage couch at the moment. But I just I found a passion in the body and eradicating pain, and found a unique way to help people free up whatever's restricting them. I do that just because it's something to keep my mind active, because I've always been quite passionate that the mind can rebel at stagnation, as the old Sherlock Holmes saying goes, that if you just have athletics, if something goes wrong, like having a ruptured Achilles, for example, like I went through in 2018, you don't have anything to fall back on. You don't have anything to occupy your mind, and it can actually be a downward slope if things start to go wrong. So I've always kept something going in the external to my athletics career to keep my mind active. Right.
That's smart. Yeah. It's amazing because we also talk here, not just training and technique and, the different things we talked about here. I'm looking soon to talk with someone about nutrition, and then sports psychology is a huge area. And, high jumpers are in some ways, this is, you can call it self-deprecation, but I always thought of myself as a mental midget when it came to high jumping. But, it's so on or off. Like for me, when I was on, I was going to beat you. I didn't care who you were. But if I was in the next breath, oh my gosh, the wind just picked up. Oh, now I'm going to have to run my curve faster. Like a prisoner of my own brain, like a overreaction, underreaction, fear, doubt, can I do this? All those things. Unless somebody I think has been an athlete at any level, when the pressure's on, how do you perform when the chips are down? Like you say, like, what do you think about? How do you think? Are you confident? I know for me, when everything was clicking, everything seemed to slow down, like get really, really slow. And I could see everything happening almost like it was literally the way I like to watch video, which is frame by frame, where I'm picking out every little thing. And then when I was off, when things were going wrong, from the time that I was standing back there going, okay, here goes, let's do the best we can. And, when you think about that mentality, I'm like, that's never going to work. And so I would be running as fast as I could, go up, jump, boom. I'd be sitting in the pit going, okay, what just happened? Like no recollection of anything, no technical analysis. Did I get my knee up? Because I was in such a weird place in my head that I couldn't even do that. It was outside of the time stream or completely unaware of it or whatever. So, I've seen both ends of the spectrum. And then, that confidence, I've told all my kids, I go, every time you're jumping well, or every time you're going to make a bar, I would say 95% of the time, it's not a surprise. Every time I PR'd that I can remember, I knew I was going to make it before I took off, if that makes any sense. I know you as a jumper probably, it's like either I've missed this enough times and I was close on that last one, and I think I know what to do to fix this, so now I know I'm over, or you're just having a great day, you know, or whatever it is. But I don't ever remember going, oh my God, I can't believe I just made that. It was like, no, I expected to make that. I was, you know, I was pretty confident before I left.
Yeah, it's a flow state, isn't it? It's feeling, not thinking. It's like having that inner confidence that you know that you can get this bar. And like you said, we can often get into our heads. We can often overthink things. And actually, the more you develop as a high jumper, I think the more you find that inner flow and think less, feel more.
Right.
Yeah, I knew that the 210 bar for Tokyo was. I remember going back to my coach just saying, "This is the bar. This is the bar. It's going to win it," you know. And I mean, he just turned to me and said, "Well, you got to believe." That was all he said.
Right.
But there is a lot of it is contributed to mindset. You know, if we were robots, our bodies would be able to jump the same bar over and over again until we started fatiguing, in which case the bar would start to lower. You know, you'd hit that sweet spot as you warmed up, and then you'd hit it, and then it would just start to slow down, you know, come down, sorry, as we fatigued. But the thing that prevents us from doing that is our mindset, and it's our you know, inert ability to overthink about the bar that's gone up, or think about the weather changing or another competitor jumping. We do overanalyze, and what I've learned through my career is that the more we can focus on the feelings rather than what are we thinking, the more we can enter that state of just a few cues where we can just focus on what we can feel and our movement, the better we will jump eventually.
Awesome. I was thinking as you were talking about it, you said you had a unique way of dealing with these osteopathies, you know, removing pain from people. Is this groundbreaking stuff that you're doing? Is this stuff that you were taught? What kind of work are you doing?
So I've dabbled in visceral manipulation. I've dabbled with a French osteopath called Jean-Pierre Barral and the Barral Institute, and that is all about like listening to what the body is telling you. In some respects, it can seem quite, you know, voodoo, but there's a lot of science that is backed by a lot of science. But it's more about palpation, and it's more about feel. It's more about how does the tissue feel? How does it differ to, you know, other parts of the body? Can you intrinsically move some of that tissue to let it go, let the restrictions go? And it has completely like altered and improved the way that I work. Together with certain fascial release techniques, I find that I can locate the cause of the issue, not just manage the symptoms and not just go to the area where it hurts. I go away from the area where it hurts and find what is actually blocking and stopping that body from moving efficiently. But there's, you know, I've been doing this for 13 years now, so I've had to continually learn, and I'm always going to be learning. And it's the same with my high jump. I'm a student of my own sport. I'm still learning. I'm 34 now. I'll be going until at least 36.
Right.
And, you know, who knows what I can achieve if I just continue to learn about how to move better.
Right. I love that, being in that area. That's an interesting double. Most athletes, I don't remember anybody that I've met, you know, as a high jumper that is doing what you're doing. So you've got both the training aspects from your own training, and then you've got rehab and that kind of, you know, and then also just what I would call pre-covery, or you know, all that kind of stuff involved. And then the last thing I was thinking of was, you mentioned a rupture of your Achilles in 2018. I think you said, was that your left or your right, and how traumatic was it, and how long did it take to get back? And
so that was my left. So my talipes leg, it was a very high rupture. It was 8 centimeters up from the heel, or the calcaneus. It was almost like it was a ticking time bomb, because it was right at the top of my scar from the surgery I had as a baby.
Wow.
So it was almost like it was destined to happen. It was like a gunshot when it went, felt like someone had taken a baseball bat to my calf. Went to stand up, and it was like I could put no weight through it. But I was very fortunate because I think I totally severed the tendon. I didn't feel too much pain. I started to feel more and more pain as it went on. I had to be put on morphine and gas and air, but it was just the shock. And I thank my stars that I'd done a lot of mindfulness work, because I was able to kind of like accept it quite quickly. It was like, okay, I've got to deal with this now.
Right.
And do the things that I needed to do in order to return. And it was a long journey. It took me over a year before I was jumping again. I then developed a bit of a knee issue on my other leg. But I worked hard, I worked through it. And then in 2019, at the end of 2019 in November, I became world champion. And then the following year, or 2 years later, I then became Paralympic champion. So it gave me the perfect opportunity to learn even more about my body. And I used it as an opportunity rather than something that was going to, like, you know, be a career ending thing.
So being high up on there, I was wondering that when you said rupture, because I know there's, you know, rupture is a loose term, if we want to say that. I know there's anywhere from partial, right? You can get some tearing, you can get it to go halfway across, and then there's catastrophic snap, like you said, where the, you know, did it roll up the back of your leg like a window shade? Like, I've heard that description before.
Yeah, I had to have surgery 2 days later, and my surgeon is brilliant. He's a guy called Bill Ribbons, and he reattached it, and he also attached it to the plantaris muscle to give it a bit more extra strength.
Okay.
And it seemed to do the job I needed it to, but it did take a long time to, you know, for a foot that can't plantarflex and get the calf loading to strengthen it up. I had to use TENS machines. I had to use reformers, Pilates style reformers, to really work the intrinsic muscles to get as much activity as I could to develop it enough to recover.
Right.
But I had a good team, and I worked hard to get back.
So the other thing I've heard about this, and one of my most fascinating classes when I was an undergrad at UCLA, was the biomechanics of musculoskeletal injuries. And we did, they used to show us film of, you know, a femur and a tibia and the ligaments in between, and they would just pull them apart, you know, with machines, and watch how they ruptured, right? So you're studying on a cadaver, you know, the methodology or whatever. There could be twisting, loading. There was, you know, these different things. And what I had heard also, and you'd see the what do you call it, a microscopic view of the threads, you know, when these collagen fibers, when you pull them apart, when they rupture, they said it looks like spaghetti strings on a mop, or they just go like this, right? Wow. So I've heard that one of the biggest challenges is to go back in there and try to line up, you know, all the fibers again, right? It's like this micro surgery where, you know, do they lop off the spaghetti ends and then just tie the two new ends together, or do they, you know, try to fit that all back together? What do you know about that? Because that's grim to talk about, but
yeah, I do not know at all what he was able to do. The guy was a miracle worker. It's maybe a question I'll have to pose to him if I ever get a chance to see him again. But yeah, I think there's just so much complexity. But whatever he did, and whatever, you know, the strength work he did alongside the actual surgery, like, it did what it needed to. So right. You know, I would just, like, you know, thank him for every day what he did.
Did you ever have if it had been your takeoff leg, do you think you would have been able to come back and jump as high?
Who knows? Touch wood, you know, that never happens. I know of jumpers who have returned. Barsham's a prime example. You know, he returned. I'm sure he had the best medics in the world on his side, but right, he returned really quickly. So I think it's possible. I think surgery is a very good option if you want to improve the longevity of the sport. But for anyone that's going through it or has gone through it, salute you for the hard work you have to put in to get back. I know what it feels like, but it is possible. It is possible to return if you are patient and do the right things.
It's amazing now what they've done. I know even back this is in the late 80s now, or it might have been the early 90s, Doug Nordquist, a friend of mine and, former Olympian and actually great golfer. He's he's these guys like you, these great athletes. We were playing golf one day. I tell my friends this story. I go, I'm playing this one hole. It's about 240 yards if you hit it around the corner, but he decided to hit it up over the trees from the tee box with a 5-wood, and he hit it and knocked it on the green. And I'm looking at him going, these darn Olympians. I go, you put them even with a golf club in their hands and they do these amazing things, right? So that's just a background on Doug. He's a great athlete, but he had a complete rupture of his ACL on his takeoff leg. And this is, wasn't in the Stone Age, but it was definitely still 30 years ago, and the techniques have gotten better, I'm sure. But they basically took a cadaver ACL, put it in there, stapled it on both sides, roughed it up a little bit, and to get it some blood flow. And he was back on the track, and he was jumping within a year and ended up jumping his PR on that cadaver reconstructed leg at 7 8 3/4. So like you said, it's amazing what they can do. And I'm sure 100 years ago, you rupture your ACL doing anything, that's pretty much, you're limping around in a cast and it heals however it can. And then after that, you're like just working on the farm or whatever, trying to do anything. But now we can come bouncing back. So, all right. Well, Jonathan, I know it's getting late for you over there. We've gone over an hour here. I could think of a million more questions, but I'm just so thankful that you took the time out to spend with us.
It's been a lovely conversation. So thank you, Troy.
Thank you. And God bless you as you keep working hard towards your next Olympics. And I'm going to be praying that we get to see the big cameras on you so we can watch when those chips are down and see you come through in the clutch again like you did in Tokyo.
Well, if you're interested, on the old Channel 4 OD on demand, or channel, I can't remember the actual what the app is called now, but following Tokyo, I then was in for filming for a show called SAS Who Dares Wins, so the celebrity SAS Who Dares Wins. So that's just aired, so you can always catch up on that. Unfortunately, they didn't see much of me, but because the shows always focus on those glamour models and the people with millions of Instagram followers, but I did well on that, and you'll get to see again something. It's more about the mindset more than anything when it comes to things like that, and hopefully I'll be able to take that into my athletics career. So
awesome. I will send you on Instagram a little bit of Dario's stuff. There's one thing in particular I was thinking about when you were talking about the agility, the side to side, and the work you're doing on your left leg. You might find it interesting. So I'll send that along as soon as I get a minute.
Thank you very much.
All right. Hey, Jonathan, a real pleasure. Thank you so much. And get some good sleep. Sounds like you got a lot of work you got to do the next day. All right, sir. All right.
Take care.
You too.